At 7:42 on our 25th wedding anniversary, my husband pushed a yellow envelope across the restaurant table and said, "I thought tonight would be the cleanest time to end this." Inside were divorce papers. His sister, Dana, was sitting beside him wearing the gold bracelet I had given him to save for our daughter. Before I could ask why she was there, Michael smiled and said Dana would also be replacing me at the company on Monday. 4 minutes later, his phone rang. The bank had frozen a transfer of $186,000 because the authorization attached to it carried my signature, and I had never signed it. Michael's smile disappeared before he answered. He turned away from the table, but the restaurant was quiet enough for me to hear him say, "There has to be some mistake. My wife approved it." Dana's hand tightened around her wineglass. I folded the divorce papers, returned them to the envelope, and took one slow sip of water. I already knew there was no mistake. The bank had emailed me that morning, but I had wanted to see whether Michael would tell me the truth before I confronted him. Instead, he had invited his sister to watch him discard me. I was 53 and had spent 23 years helping Michael build Caldwell Medical Supply from a rented storage unit into a company with 32 employees. People called it his business because he was the salesman and public face. What most of them did not know was that my $78,000 inheritance had funded the first inventory, my credit had secured the original loan, and my name was on the incorporation documents as a 35% shareholder. I had created the bookkeeping system, negotiated our first hospital contracts, and handled compliance audits from our dining room table while raising our daughter, Claire. 10 years earlier, when my mother became ill, I stopped going into the office every day. Michael began introducing me as someone who used to help with the books. I corrected him twice. The third time, he laughed and said I was being sensitive. I still reviewed quarterly reports, signed major transfers, and kept access to the company's compliance archive. Our operating agreement required both our signatures for any payment above $50,000. Michael knew that. Dana knew it too, because I had explained the rule when Michael hired her as office manager 18 months earlier. Dana had never worked in medical supply. She had managed a beauty salon that closed owing back rent, then spent 2 years moving between relatives whenever another plan failed. Michael insisted she only needed a chance. Within months, she began controlling his calendar, attending executive meetings, and referring to the company as the family legacy. Whenever I questioned an expense, Michael accused me of resenting his sister. At the restaurant, Michael ended the call and told me the bank was experiencing a technical problem. "What was the transfer for?" I asked. Dana answered before he did. "Expansion." "Expansion into what?" Michael placed his palm over the divorce envelope. "This is exactly why we cannot stay married. Every conversation becomes an interrogation." I looked at Dana's bracelet, then at him. "The bank says the money was being transferred to DRC Consulting, Dana Rebecca Caldwell." Dana's face went blank. Michael leaned closer and lowered his voice. "Do not make a scene. You served me divorce papers in a restaurant with your sister sitting beside you. The scene was your idea." I stood, paid for my own meal, and left before the anniversary cake arrived. By the time I reached home, Michael had removed 2 suitcases, his laptop, and the framed photograph from our wedding day. He left behind the financial records because he believed every important document was digital and controlled by Dana. He had forgotten the fireproof cabinet in my mother's old sewing room. Inside were the original shareholder agreement, 23 years of board resolutions, and the amendment requiring dual approval for large transfers. I photographed every page and sent copies to my attorney before midnight. The next morning, the company's controller, Priya Shah, called me from her personal phone. She sounded frightened. Dana had instructed her to classify the $186,000 transfer as a vendor advance. There was no contract, invoice, or purchase order. When Priya refused, Dana uploaded a document bearing my electronic signature and told her Michael had approved an exception. Priya sent me the file. My signature looked convincing until I checked the metadata. It had been copied from a compliance certificate I signed 11 months earlier. The document had been created on Dana's office computer at 11:18 the previous night, less than 9 hours before the bank tried to process the transfer. That was the first piece of proof. The second was worse. The transfer was not for expansion. DRC Consulting had signed an agreement to purchase a lake house in Dana's name. The deposit was due Friday. Michael planned to move company money into Dana's new account, let her purchase the property, and then list it as a corporate retreat. If the divorce moved quickly, he believed the money would no longer appear in the company's operating account when our assets were reviewed. My attorney told me not to contact them again. She sent formal notices to the bank, the company, and Michael's attorney, preserving the records and disputing the forged authorization. Because I was still a shareholder and authorized signer, the bank suspended all unusual transfers until an independent review was completed. Michael called me 14 times that afternoon. I answered the 15th. "You froze payroll," he said. "No, payroll is under 50,000 and already scheduled. I froze the transfer to your sister." "You are destroying the company because you are angry about the divorce." I protected the company from a payment supported by a forged signature. He was silent for 3 seconds. Then he said, "Dana was going to pay it back." That sentence ended any uncertainty I had left. On Monday morning, Michael arrived at the office with Dana and told the staff I had created a banking crisis. He expected Priya to support him. Instead, she asked the department heads to join the conference room and projected the transfer request, the fake approval, and its metadata onto the screen. I attended by video with my attorney. Dana said she had prepared the document because I was unavailable. Priya reminded her that I had answered 2 compliance emails that same day. Michael claimed he had verbal permission from me. My attorney asked him to identify the date, time, and method by which I gave it. He could not. Then Claire entered the conference room. Our daughter was 26 and worked as a physical therapist, not in the family business. Michael looked relieved when he saw her, as though he expected her to defend him. Instead, she placed his old tablet on the table. He had given it to her 6 months earlier without erasing the cloud backup. After he served me the papers, Claire searched it for messages about the divorce. She found a conversation between Michael and Dana. Dana had written, "Once Evelyn signs, or once we make it look like she did, the lake place is protected." Michael replied, "Do it before Friday. After I serve her, she will be too emotional to check the company." No one in the room spoke. Michael looked at Claire and said, "You invaded my privacy." Claire answered, "You used Mom's name to steal from the business she built." Dana stood so quickly her chair struck the wall. She accused Claire of choosing me, accused Priya of disloyalty, and accused me of planning the entire humiliation. My attorney calmly reminded her that the bank, not I, had flagged the forged authorization. The independent review found more than the attempted transfer. Over 18 months, Dana had approved $43,600 in consulting fees to businesses connected to friends, reimbursed personal travel as client development, and used the company card for the bracelet she wore to my anniversary dinner. Michael had signed off on most of it without supporting documents. The company did not collapse. That was what Michael had counted on me fearing. Priya and I worked with an outside accountant to keep payroll, supplier payments, and hospital orders moving while the review continued. The employees saw exactly who had created the crisis and who was keeping their jobs secure. Michael's attorney requested a private meeting. He offered to withdraw several demands in the divorce if I released the bank hold and signed away my shares. He wanted the house, his retirement account, and full ownership of the company. In return, he said he would let me keep my car and would not ask me to repay personal expenses the business had covered during our marriage. I slid the original shareholder agreement across the table. "My inheritance started this company," I said. "My credit kept it alive. My work built the system your clients trust. You are not letting me keep anything." Michael stared at the signature page as though he had never seen it before. He had seen it. He had simply spent so many years minimizing my contribution that he had begun believing his own version. The settlement took 5 months. Dana repaid the unauthorized charges and signed an agreement acknowledging she had created the false transfer approval. She resigned and was permanently barred from accessing the company's accounts. The lake house contract disappeared when the deposit never arrived. Michael and I sold the marital home and divided the proceeds according to the final agreement. I did not take over his company, and I did not try to ruin it. He bought most of my shares at an independently assessed value that was nearly 4 times what he had offered privately. I kept a smaller ownership interest and a board seat until the final payment was completed. The money gave me something I had postponed for decades: a home chosen entirely for myself and a consulting practice under my own name. Michael posted once online that divorce had taught him which people cared about family and which cared only about money. Claire replied with one sentence: "Mom stopped $186,000 from being taken from 32 employees, not from you." He deleted the post. On what would have been our 26th anniversary, Michael sent flowers to my new office. The card said he hoped time had shown me that serving the papers publicly had been a mistake. I sent the flowers to a nearby nursing home and kept the card in the same file as the forged authorization. The public divorce papers were not the worst thing Michael did to me. The worst thing was believing that 23 years of my work could be erased simply because he had stopped mentioning it. He thought I would be too heartbroken to examine the numbers. He forgot that I was the person who had taught him what every number meant. He ended our marriage at 7:42 that evening. At 7:46, the bank reminded him that removing me from his life was not the same as removing my name from everything I had built.